In the mournful penultimate episode of Season 1 The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the Eye, the light is all but hidden behind sun-killing smoke, despair, rancor, and crushing guilt. Beware, spoilers ahead. An eye shrouded in ash opens. Galadriel drags herself into a nightmare. The formerly lush village is now a wasteland. Everything is red, including the air itself. The entire area is covered in ash. The structures are on fire. A horse that is burning and screaming runs past. The tables that were just moments ago used for a feast have bodies thrown onto them and spread across the floor. The survivors stutter, choke, and wail. Galadriel yells for Halbrand and Elendil. Theo calls out to his mother. The call of neither is answered. In the whirling red ash, they come together, and Galadriel guides Theo out of town. Isildur, assisted by Miriel, strives valiantly to free Elendil from beneath wreckage elsewhere in the settlement. The gentle Untamo, who never wanted to fight at all, stare lifelessly into the blood-red sky as they remove him from the rubble. There is no time to be sad, however, as Elendil, Isildur, and Miriel rip open the building's walls to free the trapped youngsters. Isildur appears to be crushed beneath the ceiling as it bursts in flames, sending Miriel flying back in the midst of a hail of sparks and fire. The Harfoots will soon experience their own horrors while traveling through the lush and verdant migration. They arrive in the grove while Poppy sings a song about snailing. They discover charred trees and the ground is black and burning instead of apricots and apples, more victims of Mount Doom. The sages of Sadok would speak of volcanoes that would go dormant, only to wake again when a new evil is rising. Nori questions whether she introduced that new evil to the caravan. The man runs his hands over the burned tree trunk while speaking phrases that appear to awaken the wind as Harfoots gather black and desiccated fruits from the destroyed branches. However, they also awaken the tree, its scorched bark splits, revealing fresh life beneath it, and the fruits once again shine. However, eventually, it becomes too much, and a great limb collapses, trapping Nori beneath it. Both the stranger and Nori appear to be hurt. The relationship is not likely to mend soon. In relation to friendship, Elrond argues for Mithril to King Durin III in Khazad-dûm. In addition to wealth and the assurance of receiving lumber and grain in exchange for access to the mines, he also brought a poisonous leaf from the large tree in Lindon. Durin will not consent to mine Mithril, regardless of what Elrond promised or how much he means to him. The phrase used by King Durin is, "We do not dig in earth that cannot support it, tempting shadow, rock, and mine to bury us all beneath the mountain." He apologizes. However, he isn't nearly as contrite as Disa would like to see him. She screams, lice-bearded, uncaring old fool, while beating a glowing axe that had just been forged in their living room to death. Elrond, however, merely says Namari, not goodbye, go toward goodness. Elrond's returning Mithril is moved across the table by Durin with sadness. Instead of taking off, though, it comes to a stop as a result of the decaying leaf on the table. The leaf's veins suddenly stop being poisoned, and its dazzling yellow returns. Elrond is joyfully called back by Durin and Disa. But it will be difficult to quickly heal the Southlands. Elendil is one of the survivors making their way through the lifeless forest beneath the ghastly yellow sky. The bloodied and traumatized queen arrives with Elendil, but she is missing Isildur and is cloaked in the darkness her father had warned her about. To meet at Numenor's camp, Theo and Galadriel must navigate the skeletal forest separately. She replaces Theo's familiar damaged and corroded hilt with her own sparkling blade while making a commitment to assist in turning Theo into a soldier. In the hopes that others can assist him, Sadok sends the visitor over the ridge to the big folk settlements and gives him the star chart that shows the enigmatic constellation. Sadok travels in one way while the stranger goes in another, but the stranger's effect is still felt. The tree's burned-out trunk is vividly blooming with a yellow flower. He is given a priceless, large, red apple by Nori to take with him. She can't let him go without anything, even if he is a danger. He accepts it silently before vanishing over the hill. Theo inquires about Galadriel's experience with losing a loved one while hiding under a downed tree. She responds, "My brother, Finrod, and my husband, Celeborn." Theo wants her to quit blaming herself so that he can take the blame for her actions. Galadriel, however, will not allow it. Do not take the burden of this day upon your shoulders, she cautions. You may find it difficult to put it down again. She has experience with being unable to let go. Elrond observes as Durin toils frantically in the stone back in the mines. They halt when they experience a tremor, not the first one, and take a minute to allow the stones settle before bonding tenderly as chosen brothers. The glittering vein of mithril that spreads down the cavern and into the mountain bottom like roots is discovered when Durin eventually breaches the granite wall. But while they rejoice, King Durin discovers their illegal activity and hurls Elrond out of Khazad-dûm without ceremony. Elrond, however, has his piece of mithril in his grasp and now he is aware of what is possible. The king and Durin ultimately argue back in the mines. Before the king removes Durin's armored crest and throws it to the ground, they accuse one another of betraying their people by supporting the elves and the other by clinging to the past. Leave it. It's not yours anymore, the king murmurs. While eating an apple in the early morning light, Poppy is still singing about snails. Her joy is well-founded. The charred trees are now adorned with fruit and capped with green foliage. Overnight, berry plants sprouted from the burned ground. It appears that the stranger has revitalized the grove. But that evening, Nori and Poppy watch as the enigmatic white-clad men make their way toward the tree that the mysterious man had healed, gazing as intently as they had at the meteor's crater. The dweller removes the yellow blossom from the tree's trunk, and they move forward, trampling the carpet of golden petals the stranger had left in their path. Nori will remain Nori forever. She emerges to yell that the stranger turned around and went in the other direction. However, they cannot be duped because they are not Harfoots. Other Harfoots attempt to frighten them away as they loom over Nori and Poppy. However, the dweller gently kills the flame of a torch by placing a hand around it, and then he blows a snake of black smoke over their heads. All at once, the fruit-filled carts in the Harfoot camp caught fire. The Harfoot family screeches as their entire way of life is destroyed, one more house reduced to ashes. The Númenórean camp, which is tucked away in a still green clearing, is approached by the survivors of another fire. Elendil releases the agitated Beric and gallops out in pursuit of his missing rider. Elendil spits, "I should never have pulled the elf on board, I should have left her in the sea where I found her." Galadriel and Theo show up at camp just on schedule. Theo heads straight towards the hospital tent, where both Númenóreans and Southlanders alike are covered in blood and burns. Before his darkest fears are realized, he sees a bloodied shroud and hears his mother's voice. Both her and Arondr are doing fine. As Arondr promised, the family is all together, safe, and secure. Elendil pushes for a quick getaway as Muriel waits with him on a rocky protrusion, a scarlet cloth bound around her blind eyes. When Galadriel shows up, she merely wants to express regret for having caused them such suffering. "Do not spend your pity on me, elf," Muriel warns. "Save it for our enemies, for they do not know what they have begun." She makes a pledge that Númenor will return, and Galadriel assures her that the elves will be prepared. Elendil, on the other hand, can only wistfully gaze across the landscape that engulfed his son. Largo has little time for Nori's pity party as the Harfoots clean up their burned-out settlement. "We're Harfoots. We stay true to each other, no matter how the path winds or how steep it gets. We face it with our hearts even bigger than our feet. And we just keep walking." Being inherently her father's daughter, Nori is inspired to action. She moves in the direction of the stranger to warn him, and Poppy and Marigold follow her. Malva also desires Sadok, a trailfinder, to accompany them. She queries, "What's the good of living, Sadok, if we aren't living good?" They move across the hills once Sadok gives his consent. Galadriel will report to the High King as the Southlanders get ready to leave for an old Númenórean colony in search of a new beginning. But first, she is taken to a tent where she is reunited with Halbrand, who was discovered hurt on the highway. He needs to go to the elves for healing because of a bleeding and infected gash on his side. The Southlanders bow before him while shouting, "Strength to the king! Strength to the Southlands," as he leaves the tent and rides to Lindon. Disa and Durin are drinking at home while they commiserate. "I failed him, and it's all my fault, failure and mistake, fortitude and forgiveness." Disa blames his father, not Durin, and she is adamant that Durin will become king someday and that they would mine the mithril together with a fire in her eyes that is equal parts ferocious love and Lady Macbeth. The reborn yellow leaf is hurled through the wall of the restricted mine by King Durin in the meantime. It flies across glistening mithril veins before settling on the underground floor and instantly igniting to dust. The king is correct. The Balrog, a fire monster that roars from the shadows above the ashes of the linden leaf, will be encountered by the dwarves when they one day dig too far. From a house under danger to one that was both destroyed and rebuilt, Adar creeps through the blood-red smoke to return to the burning town. Southlands is no longer a real place. Waldreg says, "What should we call it instead, Lord Father?" We know the answer even before it's seared into the screen. This is Mordor now, as Adar looks at Mount Doom in the distance, still coughing its light-killing smoke into the sky. Orcs are at home. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to see more videos like this. Click like and turn on notifications to help out the channel.